I think the most common pattern is people waiting for more information or pulling on kind of XYZ reason to delay doing the thing that they don't want to do. So it's really a skill gap. Typically, folks can do the thing or have some idea of what, like the cone of action, right, that doing the thing would be. And that's what I think is beautiful about coaching because for a good amount of the work, I don't have to really tell anyone what to do, right? Like consulting, like that kind of hat is a bit different, right? Like a little bit more directive. But for the coaching, I think the magic is there's a lot of what's known within the human, and like you just have to draw that out and kind of shift the perspective for them to be like able to have their aha moment. I'd say like, decision latency is kind of the biggest pattern.
Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor podcast. Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, podcast. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Devon Taylor podcast, where we have guests from all around the world tell their unique and powerful stories to not only allow their voice to be heard, but for you to leave feeling inspired. Today's conversation is about something we all feel, but rarely know how to name. Why smart, capable people and teams still get stuck, and what actually helps them move again. My next guest has spent years inside some of the most ambitious environments in the world, not fixing people, but studying the systems around them. From high pressure innovation spaces to leadership rooms where trust either accelerates progress or quietly kills it, he's learned that culture isn't about vibes, it's about what gets rewarded. He's worked with founders, executives, and teams who know something needs to change, but can't quite put their finger on it. His work has helped surface the invisible patterns shaping how we lead, communicate, and show up, so we can choose differently. He's a coach, a cultural builder, and someone who believes clarity creates freedom. So I'm happy to welcome to the show, Kwaii Bell. Hello.
Hi, Devon. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to interview you and to have you on the show. But I really like to start with just how you got into your line of work. I feel like that's the most interesting part about our show is that we kind of get to know our guests first and then diving into their work. But yeah, I'd like for you to just kind of give us a background on how how your life led you to the moments you're in now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of a funny question, right? Because after hearing the intro you just read for me, I'm like, oh wow, I sound really cool, but it doesn't always feel that way when I think about like what it took to get here. Uh, so I guess for me, it kind of starts with school, right? I went to Dartmouth, out on the East Coast, but I went in originally thinking I was going to be a lawyer. So just like, for anyone who doesn't know what they're going to do in life, just know that like you'll do a lot of things. Things will change. But I ended up studying film, culture, and psychology while I was in school. And so I initially came out of college thinking I want to tell people stories, and I also am really curious about how all these decisions get made in a filmmaking environment and right? Like the director kind of chooses not just like how things are done, but also what gets shown. Um, and so I think right that's kind of carried over through a lot of my work. Um, when I left school, I was really focused on okay, I need to make money now, and I ended up working for the Parks Department of New York City. And in that work, I did a lot of we'll say community wide experiences. So bringing together people from all of the boroughs to Brooklyn Bridge Park to whether that's sports, whether that's, doing like the learning experiences or just making friends, walking the grounds, right? Like, what are the things that we can embed into the environment to make this a more somatic and powerful experience for all of the park goers? And so that's something that I bring with me into my next role, right? So from Brooklyn Bridge Park, I end up leaving New York City, had some family things happen, and so needed to support. And so moved back to the Midwest where my family was residing in Michigan and ended up doing some work for the Lloyd Hall Scholars Program. that's focused on technical leaders in University of Michigan's campus, right? So top 10% of the student populace that are focused on technical programs to embed leadership skills, arts and culture understanding at a high level into them and into their practice. So that way they come out of the programs well balanced and well rounded as
Wow.
applicants. And so from there, I ended up doing a lot more public speaking, leaning back into my academic background, designing curriculum, doing TED style talks, because I found that that was a much more powerful and sticky entry point to a lot of the things that and concepts that they needed to kind of take on outside of their typical kind of classroom environments. Like it gave me that opportunity to experiment in that way. And during my about like roughly 9 months to a year there, I got tapped for an opportunity at Google X. A friend of mine was working there, and she heard from the hiring manager that, hey, we've been trying to hire for this role for well over a year. We've had all of these, amazing candidates, but they come in and or it doesn't fit, or we got through like the late stages of the interviews and we find that they're not going to be a good culture fit for the Moonshot Lab. Like, and my friend happened to think of me and describe the work that I was doing and the ways that I was experimenting across the different roles that I had had. Um, and I was encouraged to apply and I ended up getting it.
Mhm.
Um, and so there I started out as just like a program manager for people and culture. Um, in that first year, my team, we were a small team, me and 2 to 3 other people, depending on the year. Um, we were really kind of focused on, okay, like how do we take our systems, our the things that we reward, how do we take kind of the things that are holding people back from having honest conversations, right? That because these things are slow to get. It's not helpful for you to come off really polite in the meeting and then be in well at that point it was Google Meets, but right for most people in Slack or whatever
Yeah.
tool, um, having basically a hour and a half rehash of what happened in the meeting that you didn't like or that didn't work or what you wish you could have said. 2 weeks of latency in your decision making because the truth of the matter isn't like we'll say common knowledge amongst the team. And then it comes out sometime later and things stall and it's like these are Google at least had like the benefit of having multi-millions of dollars for to invest in projects in the Moonshot Lab and Moonshot Thinking and all of the different, innovations that came out of there, right? Like Waymo and the like had been a 10-year endeavor before it kind of came
Yeah.
out on the other side, for example. And, it's a long-term play. But like most people, most spaces don't have that kind of runway. And honestly, we didn't either. And so a lot of our work really was how do we solve for those problems?
Yeah. And that's so interesting. What I love most about you, is that you read confidence and just hearing, with you getting a job with Google X, most people, when they hear a big company like that, would instantly feel intimidated. But it feels like you were just kind of ready for it. What do you think, like, really helps attribute to you being able to take on these big roles at big companies?
I guess what I think it comes back to advice that my, like, mom and grandma really echoed in me over my lifetime, and it's really that life, and fate and luck, all of these things, whatever you wanna call it, they favor the prepared, and so, it's not to say that I had spent my whole life up to that point working really hard with the dream of getting into Google, statistically, you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than getting into Google, let alone Moonshot Factory. So I do think some like just actual luck and timing played a lot into it for this particular opportunity. But in terms of like my being ready, I think it's preparedness, right? Like to know oneself is to have confidence. I right, like, I have a deep and profound understanding of who I am, what my quirks are, the things that maybe make me, a little more difficult, the things that make me a rock star, the things that make me a really good person, and so I can hold all of those things to be true, and so when I get feedback at work, it's, "Okay, that's something I need to work on." It's not like, "Oh, Quay is a bad person now." But I think, right, to have that kind of resilience to take in feedback um, in a workplace setting, right? Like it's different with family, it's different with partners, right? Like those are different spaces of life. But I think, the same rule can be applied in those spaces as well to different degrees. I would say it's been having a strong ownership of who I am.
Yeah, and we've only had a few conversations together before we're actually recording, but in those conversations we've had, the words that you left me with have been with me since we've last talked. So I just want you to know that you made a really impactful, um, like you just left a really impactful message in my head, and I just really was grateful for that, and couldn't wait to sit here and interview you. Uh, but I kind of want to go back to the culture thing. You said, I really liked what you said about this. You said culture isn't about sentiments, it's about whether systems reward threat or trust. And I kind of wanted to know what was the moment that really brought you to that understanding and distinction.
I mean, I would say that it was 2 places. I think I learned it for the first time, when I was at X, and I think it really has sunken in and resonated, and more profoundly as I've done work after Google. Um, but ultimately the work of the lab that I was in at X was, right, how do we create a culture that allows for systemic behavior that encourages and systematize innovation, right? So at X, it's innovation. In other spaces, it might be shipping product, right? But like, how do we maintain the speed that we do this work at and the brilliance that we do this work at without having people break down, burn out, kind of fall outside of themselves? And it's in my mind, it really is about what the system punishes and what the system rewards. So, like, for example, if in edX, just to keep with this consistent example, um, if the X system originally was copied over, like a lot of the ways of doing things were copied over from Google, and it took about like 7 to 10 years to codify the culture and create new systems. Now, at first, everyone would assume, and you wouldn't be completely wrong to do this, to assume that like, oh, you copied over Google's premier systems and way of doing things. They're humongous. They print money, some would say. Um, and so, like what could go wrong? What
Yeah.
would be better? And ultimately X is a incubation tank, right? Like its focus is to create new companies, right? Like other letters of the Google system or alphabet, kind of joke. Um, and so like if you're in a system where you're super large, you do kind of need to enforce a little bit more strictness in the behavior and the way people move and govern themselves because there's more risk. And you need to move a little bit slower because if you push an update for Google Maps, that affects billions of people, right? Like you kind of need
Yeah.
to double, triple check that. But at X, if you push send, it just goes live, for our systems for us to practice with that technology to build it out more, right? It's not like affecting the consumer yet. And so we needed the ability to move more quickly. But if we just copy over those Google systems, then we're not able to move as quickly. People are kind of getting in trouble or feeling like the way that they are evaluated in their performance, um, that system that we copied over from Google maybe highlighted and supported more of Google's behaviors, which don't allow for innovation to happen as quickly.
Yeah.
So people, maybe they hide data or they're not able to get they're not getting rewarded for the behaviors that we say we want, right? If we want people to move fast, to break things, to create breakthrough technologies, but their manager and the system that they do their performance feedback in has things that are like, are you doing no evil? How is your collaboration? How are you having communication that's unified, right? Like so then that is going to punish accidentally, it's going to punish disagreement, perhaps.
Mm.
And you need to disagree and be able to commit to different ways of doing things in order to move technology forward. And so that's kind of how the system got understood by me.
Gotcha. And then I mean, like obviously you worked with different teams, different leadership styles. What did those environments feel like from the inside for you? I mean, when you're coming in and you have these ideas and you're watching these teams, what were you thinking?
I mean, I would say that like at first my thought was everyone's brilliant.
Mm,
Um, and so then comes the kind of confusion, right? When you notice things kind of go awry. And that ended up becoming a big underpinning of the thesis behind the work that my team did in the culture lab because it really does beg the question. We're supposedly working with like the brightest and best people, and we can kind of get stuck on the fact that we perceive them to be so smart or they're so accomplished or that they're the brightest and best in how people would kind of look at folks in that environment. But also, what's that last word? People. We're all people. And so a lot of the social underpinnings, a lot of the uh, interpersonal, social, and decision making trends and patterns are the same. And those are, half nurture, half nature. And so we can't control how people come into work, right? Like what's going on in their lives, how they grew up. But we can control, at least from a workplace perspective, the environment that they're in when they do get to work, the behaviors that we incentivize. And so we can kind of create a space where they're 50% at least supported to the best of our ability to do XYZ thing.
Yeah. And that was my first thought too. Going into Google X, you must be. I mean, for me, speaking for myself, I would probably be super intimidated because there's so many smart people, and it's like having a voice could feel stifling in a way. But it seems like you were able to come in and kind of help change the atmosphere and bring a lot of positive energy. Do you feel, because I know we spoke a little bit about your creative and coaching background, do you feel that any of that helped kind of shape how you see organizations and leadership today?
Say that for me again. Did what help
Sorry.
out the organization?
The coaching, your cultural work, and kind of how you were in media and film, like that background, do you feel like that helped kind of blend into what you were doing at Google X and beyond, and kind of helped you see the organizations and the leadership discrepancies or where they could, be better?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think film was one of the best things I could have studied because I had the experience of learning not just about kind of technically how to make film, although that's lovely and I have that skill set, but how to look at a situation, right? Like look at a scene and just analyze it and take it apart. So looking at only what was said, separately being able to look at just the physical movements, no audio, like what was done, and then being able to see from a different vantage point, like how this fits within a larger narrative and like what are the patterns of the characters and how they talk and how they move and how they make decisions that allow for the viewer to understand what's going on. Uh, I think like that has been a core linchpin of like what has made not just like my coaching and training work and like all that stuff powerful, but I think it's given me a really unique way of going about doing it. And I think it's allowed for me to move really fast and have targeted, well researched creative solutions for people problems. Uh, like for like if you look at the narrative, if you look at like the narrative structure as a script, um, compare that side by side to the organizational structure of a business or even a nonprofit, right? Like you can see the consistencies that tether together the way someone decides how they run it, the things that they avoid, right? Like we all have those things in our work that we don't love to do. So we have those things in our personal lives that, oh, this happened and now it's impacting how I do my work for that day or that season. And all these things from a narrative structure, I think okay, when you're looking at a script or you're looking at a TV show, you can, as a viewer, understand that in a character. But in real life, I think things get flattened a lot of the time. And that additional context is missed. And there's a lot of um, compassion that's lost or uh, speed that's lost in decision making. And so a big part of my work is kind of unflattening our narrative script or our organizational structures and kind of breathing context back into things. And with that context, then it becomes really clear what needs to change to fix the problem.
Hmm. And to even associate it with a little bit of what we had talked about, you had kind of picked up on a decision that I was needing to make, and in the energy, I guess, in the way that I had responded or the lack of emphasis, you were able to tell, whether or not that would have been a good decision for me to make. And like I said, I'm super grateful for you bringing that to my awareness so quickly, and only hearing a few seconds of what I had to say about the whole situation. So yeah, that was truly powerful for me. Um, but when you have smart, ambitious people come to you saying, "I know something's off, I just don't know what it is," what's the most common pattern you see?
I think the most common pattern is people waiting for more information or pulling on kind of XYZ reason to delay doing the thing that they don't want to do. So it's really a skill gap. Typically, folks can do the thing or have some idea of what, like the cone of action, right? That doing the thing would be. And that's what I think is beautiful about coaching because for a good amount of the work, I don't have to really tell anyone what to do, right? Like consulting, like that kind of hat is a bit different, right? Like a little bit more directive. But for the coaching, I think the magic is there's a lot of what's known within the human, and like you just have to draw that out and kind of shift the perspective for them to be like able to have their aha moment. Yeah, I'd say like, decision latency is kind of the biggest pattern.
And this one's really big for me because I feel like I often say this, and not on purpose or not something that I feel like I want to do, but I feel like a lot of people will say I'm stuck or I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next right move is. How much of being stuck do you think is actually about the ability versus the system someone is operating inside of?
I mean, I'd say it's like 80-10, 80-20, 90-10. Wow, math.
I'm not the greatest, so
I recently did a back like this past year, I spent some time back in academia. Just this 2025, I was working for the UC president's office, and while I was there, I got the opportunity to speak at the CCPA conference, um, college California College Professionals Association or something of the like, I believe. Please don't quote me on that. But the point here is, in working on that talk, I came across this research. I'll give you. I have the research paper on my computer. I'm forgetting the name of the author, but I'll send it to you after, if it's. But in that research, I discovered this like biological term, like allostatic load, and so functionally, what it talks about is it describes that kind of like wait and see, kind of delayed decision making creates anxiety in the brain, right? Like, and functionally, when the brain is under like kind of like low grade threats, but like with high consistency, it upsets like your ability to access your prefrontal cortex, right? It makes it harder for you to make decisions. So let's say, for example, you get an email. To answer this email, you have to get some information from some folks you don't really want to talk to. And so you're like, I'll put it off. Cool. You feel better in the moment, but you also, the kind of front of your head gets a little bit more anxious. It's been 4 hours maybe since you've done that. Now, like that feeling has been there in the back of your head for about 4 hours. That's like adding weight to your brain, to your allostatic load, that ambiguity, that fear of action. And the reptilian part of your brain's getting more active now because the front's shutting down a bit. And so what happens with that is you both train your brain, and you train your brain how to react to things, and you train other people how to treat you with your behavior,
mm,
right? So if someone is treating you a certain way, you have the opportunity to shift that by how you respond and thus train them into or out of that. In the same way, you train your brain um, in how to recognize and deal with stress and threats. And so because you've let this anxiety justify not acting, you've trained your brain to believe, oh, this is somehow a real threat because I went into freeze mode. Uh,
wow,
so over that 4 hours, that idea gets more compounded. And that's a big part of why uh, when you avoid doing something, even if it's just something as simple as an email, the more time passes, the more of a hurdle you have to get over mentally in order to start working on it. And so
wow,
you can reduce your time to decision making. It allows for you to increase your overall decision velocity, not just in that particular vein of life, but overall.
wow. And here I am putting things off, thinking that I'm doing myself a service. Wow. the more you know. That kind of brings me into my next question. What's a pattern people are rewarded for that quietly burns them out?
Oh my
Would you?
god, so I love this, question because, so, uh, I'm gay, and so I have a husband, and my husband is, not American. And so in, kind of getting exposed to new cultures and traveling the world, with my partner and seeing, meeting his family, both of our extended families, and getting that exposure. I think it's really cemented for me what I thought it was all along, and it's like this grind place culture, like the hero trap. I think I would call it, right? Like the overfunctioner, right? The person who is always volunteering to solve all other people's mess, who's always staying late to make sure everything is perfect, right? Like um, I found that like we'll clap for the heroes, right? But ultimately, uh, we end up the system will end up rewarding the hero and not reaching to solve the problem or the process that required the heroics. So right, like if you have a deadline that is a month and someone comes to you and asks, "Hey, can we do this in 10 days?" And you're like, no, that's not really possible. But they push and push. And then you are like, all right, I'll figure it out. And you do. You do in the hours, you drink the coffee, you ignore your dog, all the things and personal sacrifices it takes, for the hero's journey in a workplace environment when you're working kind of beyond what is expected. And then what happens? You've now trained those people, you've trained that system to uh, really embody and believe that, oh, it actually doesn't take a month to do this. It only takes these 10 days.
Mhm.
And so next time, those 10 days might become the expectation. Um, if, for example, you don't navigate and properly communicate what it took, what was lost in order for you to achieve that, and how like that's not sustainable, right? Like, or maybe it is. Maybe right in doing that, you realize that there's some um, inefficiencies in the process, and you're able to manage those better. Have create some process for those to increase that velocity, and then okay, like now this process can actually be shortened,
Yeah.
right, whatever the case. But having ownership over that and communicating your story as a hero, I think, is really important. And most heroes, they just after they're done, they take off the mask, and it's not until 6 months, 8 months later, when it's time for a promotion or a little bit of grace, that they're like, hey, remember that time I was a superhero? And no one does.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to see yourself in that light always, especially when, there's so much around you that calls for your attention. Um, and this kind of brings me into my next point. We kind of had a briefing conversation about coaching. You did a little bit for me. I don't know if that was intentional or if that just happened, but what stood out to you about how I was showing up then?
I think so. I'll say I'll say half and half, right? Like I coaching is like a hat that I put on. But when you're walking around outside with your friends and you have a hat in your hand, it's like, oh well, I should just put it on. Why am I carrying this? So it was accidentally on purpose, I'd say.
I
Uh,
loved it. It really, like I said, it was really nice. So thank you.
yeah, no problem. I guess like what stood out to me was how I guess what stood out to me was that I see this thing, this shiny thing that as a third party observer, as someone who's not like in the thick of it, and also like someone who has like 2,000 hours of coaching experience. Um, there's this pattern, not just in how you talked about it, but also in some of the language that you used, and in your facial expressions. And I'm not gonna put your kind of personal information out there, but just so that like you are having a situation where you with a personal friend of yours where like this decision, how do I say this? You're having a hard time kind of being honest about how you truly felt, to put it simply. And you also communicated in some portions exactly how you did feel. And so then the question becomes, well, what's stopping you from just telling this person what you told me? Uh, and part of what made it easy for me to reach for to put on my coaching hat was, um, you were very like honest and transparent around the weight that you were carrying around this decision. And I don't know, like if I'm walking into an apartment building and I see someone carrying something heavy, I'm like, well, my instinct is to reach out and help them. So
That was so sweet. Yeah, no, and it was eye-opening because I think a lot of the times when we are carrying something that heavy, we neglect to actually see it or to address it. And, that simple question of why wouldn't you just tell this person the same thing you're telling me? I didn't realize was so heavy until you asked me. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is why. And it's because it feels this way. But why do you think it is so hard for us as high functioning people to see ourselves clearly? Because I couldn't see it until you brought it to my eyes. But I feel like that could be something that or should be something, that I should be able to call out or see and just be able to speak up for myself. But why do you think it is that we don't do that?
I mean, honestly, I everyone has blind spots. And it's natural because I how do I s oh my god, my dad's gonna be so proud I'm gonna have a sports reference. But, like, you can't both be the player and the referee at the same time. Uh, and so there are, like, moments in life where you're not even just moments in life, there's parts of life where kind of you're in the weeds. It's personal, it's close, you can't see the full thing. And then there's parts, where you can kind of lift a bit have, like, the tools to lift yourself up a bit, but, when we're in school, like unless you're unless you're in a specialized school, or have like, a family or parents that instill this in you growing up, it's hard to embed the habits that allow for us to get more perspective naturally. Journaling helps, but and there's like some somatic practice that helps, but ultimately I just think everyone needs a coach, they need a mentor, and they need a therapist. Um,
Mm,
a coach to help
mm,
you the thing that you want to do, a mentor to help you find like the back doors and things that are special to you to help you get where you want to go in your way. I think for a mentor, it's best to have someone, a few of them, right? Like one who's near where you want to be long term and someone who's just at the next level to help you kind of pull up, and a therapist, because no matter how perfect your parents are, there will be things. Thank you, Sigmund Freud, for teaching us all of this, but there will be things from your childhood, from your past that you'll need to work through to be a healthy adult that can meaningfully and consistently contribute to society. No matter how mentally healthy or stable you are, just things happen, life happens, whether that's like, death, job loss, transition, divorce, whatever the case may be, just like things in life come up. Um, and so, right, like, like my mom said, from the earlier question, like fate favors the prepared. And so, like, if you already have a coach, a mentor, a therapist kind of like in your support network, then when things happen, when life shifts, when you are struck by, it's not always bad, right? Like, even when you're struck by inspiration and you realize, like I have this great idea, I want these things in my life to change. Um, you have the support network to ensure that you're um, optimally presently optimal and able to act on those things to make the change as quickly as possible and as
mm.
successfully as possible.
I love that. And I love that you broke down each and every reason as to why you need, like they're distinguishing, not the same. A coach is not the same as a mentor is not the same as a therapist. And I've always had at least one of them, never at the same time, but that makes so much sense why every person should have a coach, a mentor, a therapist. Um, it's so funny that you said that too. I just had someone on a few episodes ago, I think Mitchell Osmond, he was speaking about mentors and how important it is for us to find mentors and um, how it really just helps with inspiration and helping us find ways to really troubleshoot things with a community, essentially. So I love that. I think that I agree. I've had a therapist for a really long time and have been on the lookout for a mentor. So if anyone's watching and think they can do that for me, that would be great. But I want, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
I said definitely yes. Like anyone who wants to mentor me, mentor Devon, like anyone who has like some really unique business expertise, personal expertise, like I would love to chat.
Hmm. Yeah, because I feel like that one's probably the hardest one to find, just, like, someone that 'cause, like, a mentor I see as someone that you look up to, someone that you can ask questions, someone that's really just kinda, like, there for you as like you said, like, almost like a guidance, and it's hard to find mentors, unless that's what you're actively seeking, so, yes, if you're a mentor and you're listening to this episode, come help us out.
Yeah,
But,
and it
go ahead.
things change in people's lives, right? So
Mhm.
you might move, you might not have the same therapist for your whole. You likely won't have the same therapist your whole life, same mentor your whole life, same coach your whole life, right? Because I don't know. Uh, as you change, you need different things. So you will need different folks in these roles as you evolve that have different skill sets. So.
I just it's so I don't know why it's, like, hitting me so now, like, I need a mentor, I need a mentor, I need but maybe it's because it's been coming and, I've had people on that have spoken about just the impact that it makes on, someone's life. But I do wanna ask, how do identity factors, race, queerness, class background, show up in leadership in ways people don't always name?
I mean, I think, right, like research has shown me that the personal is political. Like it's all the same soup. You just kind of like eat different ingredients of it in different parts of your day. It's kind of how I think about it. Uh, but I think, right, like there's like an identity tax in the workplace, and right, like basically whenever you're outside of your core community of folks who know you well and you have things in common and it feels like safe and warm and fuzzy. Like outside of that, there is always going to be a bit of a tax in terms of how we adjust or assimilate in the broader environment. Right. I think that's just normal, right? But the more intersections you have, the more tax or cognitive load that you kind of build up. So, like for example, if I say, for example, I have to use like maybe 30% of like my brain power, my like CPU to code switch, or make someone comfortable or show up as like professional, um, because I am more different than the norm, then on any given day, you're at most getting 70% of my brilliance, of my superpower, of my talent. If the environment enforces behaviors and rewards behaviors that encourage me to do that, right? Like in certain environments, and especially in hierarchical workplace environments, um, it can be like that percentage, that like brain tax, that load is higher and higher and higher. Uh, and I think like that's the brilliance of kind of flatter organizations, the beauty of smaller teams where there's high trust, and the brilliance of um, kind of the startup workplaces. And it's that, you know, it's pretty flat. And so maybe I just have to do, and everyone has to do some percentage of this, but maybe in those environments, instead of having to do 30 to 40% of my brain and just making sure I'm showing up okay and choosing the perfect words and being expertly polite and like all of that stuff. And for anyone listening, whatever that version of masking or adjustment looks like for you, like I like just like like that percentage
Yeah.
versus like in these other spaces, maybe I just have to do 5%, right? Like I have to make sure I'm wearing pants.
Yeah.
As you you know, yell at people, right? Like the basics. And therefore I have more freedom and comfortability to give direct feedback that allows for us to move our products forward. It allows for me to be like more honest and creative in how I problem solve, because I'm not afraid to be punished or made fun of or dinged on my promotion because I failed at something. Because right, the only way we're going to get something new is by doing something we haven't done before, and I might not be perfect at it the first time. So if you could like not make it embarrassing for me to try, like that'd be great. uh, I actually saw like this interview of like Tyler the creator, and I think he in it he's like making fun of folks who are like mean about the creative process. It's like, right, like when did it become lame? When did it become embarrassing to try to like
Right.
care about something? right? Like, why is that? I don't know where things have shifted where like that's like not,
Right.
but I personally always think it's cool to like try something and to like try to make things better. Um, yeah.
That's so true though, that we live in like an age of like you mess up and you're like almost like a failure, or like you're looked at as like, ha ha ha, look at that person, they're stupid now or whatever. And maybe that's why people have such an apprehension when it comes to like starting something new or putting themselves out there in a certain way. Or even like for me, like it was a podcast, like for so long it was like hard for me to do this because I thought, oh, people are going to listen to it and think I'm stupid, or no one's going to want to be a guest. And here we are 60 something episodes in, and had I let that thought, take its own flight, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you. So
And I'm glad you pushed for it because like I really am appreciating this conversation.
me too. Yeah.
I feel like, there's the weight of homogeneity, right? Like that just like gravitational force that whispers in your ear and kind of pulls you back to like be like everyone else. But that's not gonna get you anything that you don't already have. And I don't know. I personally want more.
So much more. And that's what this next section, I kind of want to use your coaching abilities to kind of just help anyone that may be struggling with these questions or maybe struggling with this point in their life. So, first one is when someone knows they need to have a hard conversation, but they keep avoiding it, what's the first step you give them?
Mm. I When someone's worried about having a hard conversation, I really ask them a few questions. So one, what is fact? What is fiction? So from your perspective, kind of like from a filmmaker's director's kind of perspective, what is happening in the scene exactly, right? Like no nuance, no projections, right? Because like that's for the actor or for like the other person in this conversation to decide when they respond to you, or when you ask them what they're feeling and what their intentions were, right? So we can't assume that unless they've told you directly, and so let's just separate the fact from the fiction and kind of focus on exactly what is true, right? Because a lot of times there's a lot of what might be, what they might be thinking, or what they might have meant, what they might do if you say this thing a certain way, like, and all this practice around just the comms of it. But ultimately, like, we don't need to workshop 8 different versions of what you might say. We need to get really crystal clear on what your messaging is, what the takeaway is, what your fears are, so that way you can mitigate those going into the conversation so you can stay grounded and adhere and kind of connected to like what the outcome is that you desire. And ideally that outcome is understanding the other person. Like, because that creates the space for them to be honest, for you to be honest, and then you can make a decision because you have all the information.
What's one boundary people should practice with themselves before trying to set it with others?
Resource management. Yeah. Every like don't I think yes is a powerful word, but no is a stronger one.
Right.
Uh, and we have limited time. And so I don't know. I think something that a client of mine was struggling with, just like I guess it was a bit away, like just before the holidays. But what came out of that conversation was like, don't say yes when you mean I'll see if I can find time.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's
I
something.
like that.
Can you think of a few examples where it's like someone asked you to do something, you said yeah, if the yes flew out of your mouth before you could even think about it, and now you're committed to something and you're not certain if you can kind of flex to make it work.
Mhm.
And if you do, then it's definitely a flex. It's not smooth, and that's just because your reflex, like someone's reflexes to please. But also, if you're saying yes to something and you don't have the resources to follow through on it or to deliver it with excellence, then that's a lie.
Yeah.
No, no, you can't, but you said yes anyway. Like that's just that
Mhm.
thing you said is not true. No, you cannot. But also, if you don't respect your own capacity, no one else will. And you have to kind of know yourself in your capacity in order to create a boundary or to have that be respected.
Yeah, I love you said that because that's one of my biggest problems is creating that capacity and saying, I think I'm taking on too much. And, people will take advantage of that. Believe it or not, people will take advantage of that capacity go and overflow. But last, what happened?
or unknowingly.
Right. Yeah, to whatever, is the benefit of them in that moment, whether it's, knowingly or unknowing, like you said. But if a leader is listening today, they want to redesign trust inside of their team. What's one system they should examine first?
Well, I mean, if a leader wants to redesign the trust system, what they need is my trust protocol. But where I kind of help teams reestablish trust, understand kind of like what are the friction points that are eroding trust, and I have like a trademark kind of trust formula that we work through the program. But honestly, if you in the short term, right, for like any people leader or any person who wants to build trust with someone, whether that's like, a lover, a people manager, a new mentor, your little sister, whoever, um, what builds trust is predictability and reliability. So whatever you are going to do, be consistent with it and make sure that it's reflective of how you want to be perceived. So is your decision making process consistent and reliable? So what that means is, are you the kind of person where if I text you, I know that I'm not worried about you if you're going to respond right away because you've trained me in how you respond and how you communicate to me and what you say. Where I know you're not the person that's going to text back. If I hear from you in 5 days, I know everything's fine, and that's not because anything's wrong, but like I understand about you as a person that texting is not your thing. I understand if I really want to get something to you and it's timely, I should call. I should probably FaceTime because that sends urgency more so than some reason. But like written message is not your thing. And that allows for me to predictably understand where I stand in the relationship with you. That means it's not about whether I perfectly love all of these things. It's about do I know what to expect? So that way I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate a surprise, especially when you're not, well, who expects a surprise? But, but yeah. Um, I love this, and I have a few more questions that I want to ask before I let you go.
Yeah. All the
One
time
of the
you need.
bigger ones, yeah, one of the bigger ones is how do you change your approach? Obviously, from one on one to working with like a big organization. What do you think is the biggest changes that you make when you're approaching those two different, I guess, groups?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really like the scale. I think when I'm doing one to one, it's like someone's debugging code. It's very in the weeds. And it's also tailored in particular to like that person, that unique individual system and environment that they're in, like their universe becomes like the focal point for like that hour for that time. And so similar to reading the larger environmental systems, I focus deeply in on that individual, the environment around how they make their decisions and how their patterns, their behaviors, their habits is the word I'm looking for, show up and influence the way that they get things done and they move towards their stated goal. Whereas when I'm working with organizational work, and work like in teams, especially like that level of nuance and depth is a bit unnecessary, because all of these people create an environment together. And so it's less about outside of like, if there's a major decision maker a part of like this group. But even in that example, like ideally, it's a group of peer executives or leaders together in a cohort or on a team. Um, Either way, that would be like the big difference, like the scale and the focus. I would also say that like one to one, that is so personal that it takes a lot longer to get all the context that I need. Whereas for enterprise or organization wide, I find like I can get the context a lot quicker because
Yeah,
there's so many different entry points into like the same situation. And
yeah.
so I can triangulate a bit faster.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. What tells you a culture intervention is actually working, not just sounding good?
Mm.
What do you
So so this was the hardest part of my first like year and a half when I was at Google X, because Google is a data company, and coming there from the academic environment where I was doing new things, I was writing papers about what I was doing, but I wasn't necessarily like pulling statistics, writing kind of like hard reports. But I found like the best thing to communicate, kind of the best way to communicate to hard to deal with concepts, superfluous kind of woo woo, as some people might describe topics and programs and work like culture, is hard numbers. And so the first year and a half I was at Google, I spent like that's probably too much, but like 60 to 65% of my time was spent on like the data strategy, um, and deep functional research into like the frontier statistics for these kinds of programs, for people work, and for behavior change, and how to quantify that in a way that not just is in alignment with like psychological and neuro science, like based like research and papers today, but also is presented in a way that a profit driven organization like Alphabet or like startup, YC, like any place that's trying to turn a profit, right? Like, how do I communicate the value of these things with hard numbers to those groups?
Yeah.
Uh, and that's, like 3.1 million saved in retention costs, right? For example, like over like 33% like increase in manager effectiveness, like these kinds of stats, like that sounds good. That also takes like a lot of work, and consistency in surveying and data collection in order to be able to say that with certainty. I wouldn't change it because now I have that confidence in what I do and the proof in the pudding, so they say.
Hmm. Yep. Absolutely. For anyone that's listening who feels seen by this conversation but doesn't know what their next step is, what would you invite them to do?
I would invite them to reach out to me. I would say one, like I'm happy to help. I'm happy to work with you. You can always find the ways to contact me. My name is Kwaii Bell, and my contact info is on culturaconsulting.com. Um, and if you're also just looking for a kind of a quick fix, I would say that like getting to know oneself and to be brutally, deeply, candidly honest with yourself, right? Like, you don't have to be that honest with your girlfriends, you don't have to do that with your boss, with your teammates, but at least for, like, oneself, that's kind of what gives you the foundation, the basis to make hard decisions because you have to know what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you being here and just giving us all this knowledge, helping me out when we spoke before this, and kind of elaborating for everyone so they can kind of get an idea of what you do. But also, before you go, I would love for you. I know that you kind of just left it right now, but any links, any websites, you leave that right now. We'll also leave it in the show notes. So if anyone wants to book a call with you and get a consultation, they're more than happy to go down to the show notes and do that. But yeah, if you want to just leave any of that before you leave.
Let's do it. So, hi, everyone. My name is Kwaii Bell. You can find me on culturaconsulting.com. That's culture with an A instead of an E. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, just like you, LinkedIn general link slash KWAIIBELL. That's Quay Bell. Yeah, and reach out. Diagnostic calls are free. Like, let's just spend 30 minutes and see what's going on.
And I'm super hopeful that anyone that's listening that may be struggling, just like I was with the right next step, whether it be you're working with the group or individually, I would highly suggest Quay. I am still resonating or still feeling the resonance from when you spoke with me. So I'm super grateful for you to do that for me and to take that time, but also to be here on the show. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, of course. And next time I'm down south in Riverside, like let's link up. And obviously, we had our first coaching call the other week, so like I owe you a follow on. Like let's check in
Yeah,
again.
absolutely. Yes. And I'm going to take you on that. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you guys would like to follow Quay, you guys can go to the show notes and click the links below. But until next time, I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you guys and bye.
I'm with Kwai when I say, sign me up for a mentor. Haha, what another great episode, and what a blessing that Kwai is. If you'd like to book a call with Kwaii, please visit www.kulturaconsulting.com and tell him Devon sent you his way. Thank you for tuning in. See you all for the next episode.
Hey guys, it's Icarus here,
And Amelia!
and I'm here to tell you if you'd like to join our brand new adventure. Go to DevonTaylorAuthor.com to learn more.
And check out the cool items like the new bucket hat.
Yeah, and so much more. See you guys there.
Shine, shine bright like a deep space star. Stay true to yourself, don't cry.